how do you determine what doing your best is? I know that that's a fairly simplistic question on face value, but maybe you said that, and I understand what you mean by that. I understand when people say do your best, right? I know, I get it. Consciously, I understand what is meant by that, but I have an opportunity of speaking with someone that's dedicated their lives to understanding human behavior and the nuances of how it is that the mind interprets things. So I feel like I want to get involved in the semantic understanding of that.
Well, I think when it comes to doing your best, you can divide that between you feeling like you did your best and somebody else feeling like you did your best. Now, I wrote this book, The Gift of Adversity, and I combed through it many times with the help of wonderful editors. I can say this is the best I can do. And if somebody reads the book and says they don't like it, they don't think it's well done, I can say I completely respect your opinion, but I can know that I did my best. So that's a good feeling, because if I fail at my best. Now, then there are other people who say you didn't do your best. Now, it depends who this other person is. If this person is a critical parent for whom you just never are good enough, or a critical mentor or a critical teacher, and always tells you you didn't do your best, well, that person is a negative influence in your life. You need to disconnect your reactions from that person's opinion. But then say...
That's interesting. I disconnect your reactions from that person's influence. Okay.
Right. But say you've got a really good mentor, and say you've got a good teacher, and your teacher says, you know, Andreas, I think you could have done better because I saw you do better in a previous thing, and that's what you did then, and this is what you're doing now. So let's try to understand, what is it that you could correct? Somebody maybe who is a baseball player, maybe a baseball pitcher. The coach sees a little mechanical error, says, you know, I think if you just did this a little differently, you would be doing your best. I think that somebody who is genuinely on your team, on your side, has the ability to help you dissect out what you're doing that's making you fall short of your best. That is a gem of a person, and you need to hold them to yourself, as Shakespeare would say, with hoops of steel, because those people you want to keep close to you.
You know, in my intro, I forgot to mention that you're a really cultured man that's often quoting literature and theater and movies. It's just great. Sorry, Norm, I kind of lost my train of thought. You made me laugh with the Shakespeare quote, and everything went blank. What do I do? How do you discern what sort of person you have next to you? Because, look, I mean, in my own life, oftentimes I've kept very destructive people very close to me, and I didn't realize that they were destructive until I woke up to the fact that they were. So and we all do that. I mean, I'm not reserving that privilege exclusively for myself.
Well, you know, I think it's a great question, because we definitely need to avoid destructive people. And sometimes it's difficult because they may be presenting themselves as your friend or your ally. But I quote, and I paraphrase because I'm not getting it exactly right, something that Maya Angelou said. She said, we may forget what people said or what they did, but we don't forget how they made us feel. And I think if somebody is making you feel bad repeatedly, that is your emotional intelligence speaking to you. That's the time when you say, okay, my emotional self is telling me something, is giving me an important message. What can I learn from this? What is happening here? You may find that the person is putting you down in subtle ways. The Black Swan, the lovely movie with Natalie Portman and Barbara Hershey as the mother, early on, she comes home, and Barbara Hershey is very invested, ostensibly, in her career, her daughter's career, and says something like, you know, you really are the hardest working ballerina in the whole troupe. Well, that is a very damning with faint praise kind of comment. You're the hardest working person. You know, we all know people who say, you know, considering how hard you work, you know, you're doing quite well. It kind of means you don't have that brilliant talent. You're just a slogger, you know.
And no matter what you do.
And so here's somebody who's really pretending to be really on your side and really on your team, but somehow you end up from every interaction feeling put down, maybe. Something's going on there. And the emotions are often the first guide that you're dealing with a snake in the grass.
I think that's valuable. Okay, so we're speaking about emotions, and as the would arbiter be the correct word?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Speaking of emotions as the arbiter of good and bad, in terms of who we let influence us, so to speak. Where typically, you know, we feel these emotions, right? I mean, you did write a book called The Emotional Revolution, so I feel like I need to ask you these questions. That was what was that, your fifth book?
Something like that.
Fifth. Was it before
Before
Transcendence?
Transcendence. Mm-hmm.
So Emotional Revolution, Transcendence, and now
The Gift of Adversity.
The Gift of Adversity. We feel emotions in our body, right? We feel them in our chest, in our stomach, in our neck, and then we process situations that have occurred to us in our lives in our head. Do you think that it makes sense that we can use those feelings that we feel in our chest as being the emotional intelligence? I'm searching for words.
Yes, I think.
So the head is sort of the ego, the heart is more instinct, or the soul, or the spirit, or I don't know what else to call it. Norm, help me out.
You know, we carry our emotions in our body, and our language is infused with that knowledge, because we say we have butterflies in our stomach, or you're giving me a headache. And sometimes we mean it literally, but sometimes we mean it because of the associations we have with how a headache feels. When we are afraid, our muscles tense up. When we are calm, our muscles relax. Our bodies are very, very important. And in a very pivotal essay called What is an Emotion?, the pioneering psychologist William James said, we first feel something in our body, and then we have the emotion. He said, I don't cry because I'm sad because I cry. First, there's the physical thing. He gave the example of the bear in the woods. We see the bear and we run. And because we run, we are scared. Now, modern day neuroscientists, emotional neuroscientists, will say, look, there's a whole part of the brain that is specialized to feel emotion. But what's really happening is that the messages are going bilaterally. Our feelings are causing our body to tense up. Our tense body is feeding back on our feelings. I had a recent example.
That's fascinating.
I had a recent example with a colleague. He and I pursued this theory of William James and Charles Darwin, because they said, for example, that if you frown, if you wrinkle your brow and furrow your brow,
I have a habit of doing, so this better be good.
That makes you feel sad. And in fact, in marked depression, there's actually a sign in the brow called the omega sign. There's the omega from the brow being furrowed and wrinkled. And the idea has always been, well, you're feeling sad and therefore your brow gets crinkled. But what Charles Darwin suggested is that maybe because your brow is crinkled, it makes you feel sad.
Muscle memory.
Exactly. So we thought we'd do a study that we would take a group of depressed people and take some of them and paralyze those muscles with Botox. And then we had a control group where we just put saline, salt water in that place instead. And guess what? The Botox actually led to improved mood. And they looked better as
Improved social lives.
On the other hand, I wonder if you were an actor and you had too much Botox, would that make it hard for you to access feelings of sadness because you wouldn't have some of that musculature that normally signals these emotions to you? It's a speculation. I don't know.
Sure, and I think that that's really tricky because where it is that we store our emotional memory, I think that although there's some you can make some generalizations about it, I do think that that's specific to each human being. You can say, for example, that people store their anger in their jaw muscles here, right? Because every time that you feel slighted and you want to say something, but, naturalistically or in the circumstances that you're in, you shouldn't speak up. You're in a boardroom, you're at a job interview, you are serving somebody at a restaurant, whatever it is, and somebody's rude to you, you don't want to let them have it. I know I often do, but you bite down instead and you bury that anger in here or in your body, in your shoulders. I'm using the places that I go to. Now, yes, I do think that many people use the same things, but I do also think that it's from person to person where it is that their muscular memory is stashed away, so to speak, is for each individual to discover. And it's why Strasberg developed his brand of relaxation, so we could have control over our bodies, our instruments. Anyway.
I should mention, if I can chip in, that the book before this was called Transcendence, and that is healing and transformation through transcendental meditation.
Sure.
And that's one practice that has fascinated me because it's a simple practice of meditation, but nevertheless, it's capable, as are other types of meditation as well. It's not the only one that has good effects, but it's the one that I found so effective of kind of dissolving some of this tension, because I think it's excellent if you're acting the role of a murderer to get in touch with your rage and clench your jaw, but you really don't want to be walking around feeling like that all the time.
Sure, the difference between naturalistic and realistic behavior is essentially that.
Yeah, you don't
naturalistic behavior is what's socially acceptable. Realistic behavior is instinctual. It's what you want to do when you want to do it.
Right. But I think also if we hold on to muscle tension and headaches and neck tension and so on and so forth, it's going to wear us down, and it's not a good way to live. So if we have ways of dissolving some of these stresses and tensions when we don't need them for a role or we don't need them for a purpose, that's a good thing to do.